witches had been around for centuries. They're mentioned in the Bible. But for most of that time, they were seen as a force for good. They were kind of white witches, if you like, and healers, wise women. They understood sickness and disease and how to cure it with herbal remedies, or perhaps more weird and wonderful spells and incantations. And then they stopped being a force for good. In the middle of the 14th century, when the church decided that witchcraft was synonymous with heresy and it should be punishable by death. And suddenly then neighbours turned on neighbours. Practices, harmless practices that had been a force for good in local communities were suddenly seen as a force for evil. Exactly what was in that spell or herbal remedy? Surely that was what had caused that child to die, or that crop to fail, or the sudden storm that afflicted a local community. And so now witches were seen as evil, and an evil that had to be rooted out from society. Witchcraft suddenly appears on the statute books with terrifying frequency in the Tudor period. And it was so easy to be accused because a number of different things you had to kind of tick the boxes. What makes a witch? Well, female, yes. That most women, about 85% of those convicted were women. Poor, you're somehow on the periphery of your society. You own a cat. Yes, we might see that as a more modern view of a witch with a broomstick and a cat, but no, that was entirely as the Tudors saw it, that a witch would have a familiar, an animal, most often something like a cat or indeed a rat or something of that ilk. And that somehow they weren't popular with their local community, and therefore it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it's a great way of getting rid of somebody in your local village you don't like. You accuse them of witchcraft. There's an investigation which often includes things like ducking a witch in your local pond or stream. Quite often women die by this trial. If they rise to the top, they are guilty. If they sink, they were innocent. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And so now it's one of the most terrifying dangers facing people at all levels of society, but particularly the poor, the afflicted, and the women in Tudor England.